We've got three things to show you today. One of them is a change that Microsoft have introduced, but I think it's a really, really nice one, so I included it today. And then there are two releases of things that we've done in Bevica for this Wave 1 update. So the first one is the one you can see on screen, is the data analysis mode pages. So this basically changes a list page in the software into a pivot table. So you can do some really quick and easy, nice reporting on grouping by any piece of information that you can see on the list. At the moment, it's in preview mode, which unfortunately means you switch it on, you can play around with it, do your reporting, but overnight it'll revert back to blank and you've got to do it again. They will be releasing it properly, I think, once they've had some feedback from customers, and that hopefully will be soon. So you have to set it up in feature management, but again, I'll show you how that works in a second. The second thing I wanted to show you was unpaid reserves. So this has been a long time coming. We have unpaid reserves in Bevica SaaS. So effectively, what you're doing is you're soft reserving stock against customers or groups of customers. So you create your unpaid reserve groups and you assign customers to them, and I'll explain why we've gone down the route of unpaid reserve groups. Then you reserve your stock against your unpaid reserve groups. And then for those that are used to the old unpaid reserves, it works in a similar way. You go to your sales orders and then you decide which unpaid reserve you apply to that particular sales order the customer has access to. This is in the final throes of testing and updating Freshdesk, so we will be releasing it in the next 3 to 4 weeks. Then the last thing I wanted to give you a flavor of is paid reserve bottling. So this is where if you're holding paid reserves for your customers, you can convert those into other items and other units of measure. So typically, this is used in the en-primeur process where you might have sold, let's say, 9-litre cases or 12 packs, and then when the supplier in France or Italy decides to bottle the stock, they end up with 6 packs or magnums or halves. You can then easily convert those paid reserves into the actual physical items and units that the supplier is sending over. We can manage alternative items, so there's a quick way of setting up which your alternative items might be for your paid reserves. It's all managed using paid reserve bottling orders, which make sure that we don't lose any stock or gain any stock in the process. And then there's a paid reserve bottling worksheet to try and make it easier to do this in bulk. So if you have a campaign with a set number of products and a set number of paid reserves, you can group them up and work it out what you need to convert as a whole on a worksheet before you post, which then converts the old unit of measure paid reserves into the new unit of measure paid reserves. So hopefully that's of interest. Let's go into the first one. So the first one is the pivot table on lists. So here I've got my version 22. So first thing I need to do is go into feature management and search on analysis. So this one here is feature preview analysis mode. And I just need to click on try it out. So it opens up a new tab with the feature switched on, unfortunately though temporarily. So now the main difference is if I go into, where should I go? If I go into something like item ledger entries. So if I go into a list form, we now have this analysis tab on the top. So it opens up as a standard list, what everyone expects. But if you click on analysis, it effectively turns it into a screen that looks a bit like a pivot table in Excel. So if I open up the sidebar here, it gives me all the sort of options that you'd be used to if you're used to doing pivot tables in Excel. So here, for example, what I might do is I might want to look at my stock by location. So to do that, I need to find the location code. If I drag it off down onto the side, you'll see now that immediately it's grouped things by location with the nice ability of drilling down and seeing all the entries that make up each of those groups. I can decide what columns are actually being calculated. So over here on the right hand side, some of these might not make sense for the analysis that you're doing. So quantity makes sense, invoice makes sense, that one doesn't, sum of unit price doesn't make sense. So let's remove some of these. Target cost, cost amount actual. So let's say I wanted kind of more of an inventory and costing information. You'll see now I've got my sum of quantity and sum of invoice, which in all cases here is almost the same. And if I scroll across, I've got my sum amount. So in the past, you could have done this by exporting it all into Excel and doing the same thing in Excel, but I think it's really neat that you can do it inside the software without really too much hassle.
Claudia, someone said, can you keep this as your own individual view once you know exactly what pivot you want to keep, or is it always going to default back to all the information?
So the idea is that you can save this view. So you can see there's a tab on the top here. So I can say I'll rename it. So let's do by location. So that there, when this is released fully, that will stay there, and it stays for you as an individual. So it remembers it by user. So the idea is that you can come back to this list tomorrow, the day after, next week, click on the analysis, change it from the standard list to the analysis, and then you can have multiple tabs here, all with different types of pivot tables and
all ready to go
analysis.
As you need. Thank you.
So what I can also do from this tab, I might then say I want to duplicate it. So basically it creates a copy, and on this one, what I want to do is I want to do it by location and duty status. So if I grab variant and bring that one down underneath location. So now if I click on blue, the first kind of indent is duty paid, duty free, telling me how many lines are in each, and obviously the sum quantity and sum invoiced relates to the actual line that I'm on, and then I click on duty free and it shows me all the entries. These columns here, you can decide if you want to see them by ticking or unticking these options here. So I might, let's say I'm not interested in cost center, salesperson. So you can make it quite neat and tidy. And one of the things that I've noticed that's not on this page, analysis page at the moment, is the ability to export it to Excel. But I expect that to come before it's released fully. You can create your pivot and then export it to Excel kind of in an already formatted manner. So I think this is really neat. It'd be lovely if this had been released years ago. It's a really nice feature that when they release it properly, I think it'll become just part of our general, this is what you can do from a reporting point of view.
Yeah, internal reporting, yeah.
Okay. So hopefully that's of interest, that's nice. So the next thing I wanted to show you was the unpaid reserves. So we've taken the idea that what we want to do is we want to soft allocate stock against any type of or any collection of customers that we want. So we went down the route of creating these things called unpaid reserve groups. So if I go to unpaid reserve groups, so it all starts by defining what your groups of customers are. So we did this deliberately so that you could literally create any different combination of customers you wanted to. So in my example here, I've got a set that are for channel, so off-trade, on-trade, specialist customers. I've got another group that's for salesperson, another group that's for tiers of customer, tier 1, tier 2, another one as a house account. So these are just examples, but you can decide how you want to define your group. So we're not tied into any field that's on the customer record itself. You can decide 100% how you want to group your unpaid reserves. So once you've decided on the groups themselves with a name, you then assign your customers to your groups. So if I click on my off trade and click on number of customers, so these are the customers that are part of, in this case, the off trade group. A customer can be part of as many different groups as you like. So they could be part of the off trade, and bizarrely they could be part of the on trade as well. It's really up to you how you define those groups and how you want them to have access to the items and the stock that we're going to attach to these groups in a second. So to add a new customer to this list, you edit, you come down here and basically you say, oops, let me do that again, and then you just pick the customer, and then they're now part of that group and will have access to any item reserves that are attributed to, in this case, the off-trade group. You do that for all your groups and your customers. So effectively, if you create a new customer or you're managing, you change your customer groups, then you come in here, you do the admin. You can bulk update this using Rapid Start. So you don't have to come in here and do this manually using Rapid Start. It's really easy. You create your codes first, and then using Rapid Start, you can add your customers to your groups. Once you've done the customers against the groups, then I think logically the next thing is to add the items. So you can see here how many item lines there are for each group. So if I click on the 3, these are the 3 sets of unpaid reserves that we have against the off-trade group. And within each of them, it's telling us how many cases are actually reserved. So this is where you would say, for a particular customer, group of customers, salesperson, this is what you've got access to, this is what we're putting aside for you. And you can assign a review date. If there's anyone that's responsible for it, you would assign a user ID, and then you can just put a manual note to say maybe why it was created or if there's anything special about the group. So as ever in the software, if I click on the filter and remove that group code, you'll see this would be a list of all my unpaid reserves. I could then filter it on where the quantity is more than 0, maybe a review date in the next month, and then those are the ones that I might then be sending over to the assigned user to say, you've got a month to decide what's happening with these, they'll be deleted, they need to be updated, or we need to share them with other people. So you can manage the unpaid reserves, which has always been a bit of an issue, making sure that we don't have unpaid reserves lying around for old stock that can't be sold anymore. So to create the unpaid reserves, again, I can go into the items again just via the tab along the top, just hide the fact box. So to create a new unpaid reserve for stock, I come in here, create a new line, tell it which product the unpaid reserve is for. I'm going to make it for my red leaf. I can then put in a review date, who's assigned to, and then when I edit, I'm shown this card form, and this is where I apply a reservation against my stock. So at the moment, we've just done it against item ledger entries, so physical stock that we've receipted. One of the plans for the future is to be able to assign this against purchase orders or stock coming in, so that you'll be able to create your purchase orders and pre-assign it against unpaid reserves while it's still on a purchase order. And then the process of receipting it will automatically convert it into item ledger unpaid reserves that then you can assign on sales orders.
Do you know roughly how long that might be? Is it in time?
That'll probably be late summer.
Thanks. I knew someone would ask.
So here on this new unpaid reserve actions, click on reserve. So this will show me all the item ledger entries for this particular product across locations and across duty status. And then here I decide how many of each of these I want to reserve. So I'll do all of those, 20 of those, and let's say 5 of those. And when I say close, it'll then reserve them, or unpaid reserve them, against that particular group. So now only customers in that group have access to these particular these quantities against that stock. So what we're doing in the background is we are effectively creating a reservation against a kind of a house account that's hidden in the background, and that's what's managing all of this, and it's the sales order that then determines which customers have access to which bits of unpaid reserve. So this is the setup. If I close this and go back to my role center and go to a sales order, so I'll create a sales order for a customer that's part of a couple of groups. I'll do new. In a second when it wakes up. Here we go. For the salad bar and grill. So you create the order in the same way as you do before. And then you have access here against the prepare button to get unpaid reserves. So if I click on get unpaid reserves, it'll show me those unpaid reserves that this customer has access to. So you'll see in this case, there's lots of items. We can add here the item description to make it a bit easier. And it tells me also which group I've got access to because I'm this particular customer. So then to take the stock, I edit the list, and then I might say, oops, edit list. I might say, I want to take 15 of those perhaps, and then because they're a part of the tier 1 customer group, I might take 10 from there. And then I close this, and then it'll transfer the reservations from this hidden customer or house account onto the sales order itself and reserved it for that particular sales order and customer. And we're also, to make it easier and for auditing, we can tell here that this particular line came from our unpaid reserve number 3 and this one from 14, and which channel the reservation has come from. So when this is posted and the reservations get downdated and the stock is gone, we can go back and we can see which customer or which sales order has taken any particular unpaid reserve, so that we can audit it for any queries that people might have in the future. So now this order is effectively a standard order. I can add other lines to it. I can do anything I might want to do with this. I could, if I wanted to, sell this into reserve rather than for dispatch. It's really just a standard sales order now that would go through any process, integration with the warehouse, picking, packaging, etc. So the first release of this will be in about 3 or 4 weeks. We do think we'll be improving it over time. So the ability on purchase order, and if anyone wants to play with it, have ideas about making it easier to navigate around and to find things, then please let us know, and we'll just improve it over time. But we wanted to get something out as a first release so that we can then, it's easier to improve it with people's feedback. So that's unpaid reserves. And the last thing I wanted to show you today was bottling. So paid reserve bottling. So like I said before, the scenario here is that we have paid reserves that we've sold of a particular product and a particular unit of measure, and for some reason that needs to be changed into another product or another unit of measure. It all revolves around paid reserve bottling orders. So this is what does the work and does the management and the control before we post the conversion from one unit of measure or product into another. So the idea here is that we can set up bottling orders for an existing paid reserve, and then using the details on that bottling order, we can convert it into another product, another unit of measure, and it'll convert it and create new paid reserves. So if I go into my bottling order number 8, just to show you what the bottling order looks like. So at the top of the screen, we have the details of the existing paid reserve. So in this case, it's paid reserve number 15 that belongs to Mr. Co, and it's that product. And in this case, we only want to convert one case, one 6x75. The lines underneath is what we want to convert it into. So I said before that we could kind of predefine what possible products we wanted the existing paid reserve to be converted into. So we're using a bit of materials for that. So when I create the bottling order, it automatically populates the lines, in this case, with the 3 options that I've predefined. And then it would be up to the user to come in here and say, this one 6-pack here, in this case, I want to turn it into 3 magnums of Sassicaia. The system will make sure that you're not gaining or losing any literage when you do the conversion. So the equivalent case quantity on the header has to match the total equivalent cases on the lines. So you can convert it into more than one product just by updating the new quantity here, but the total literage on the before and the after have to be the same. Once it's all correct and you're happy with it, you have things like document dates, posting dates, etc. You would then release the order, as you do with most transactions in the system, and then you post. And posting will remove the existing paid reserve or the one case and convert it with a new paid reserve number into the new case. So if I post, it'll go through and do all of that automatically, and it won't lose any liquid, it won't lose any volume, and it won't lose any cost. Everything's like for like, just apportioned across all the new paid reserves it's creating. So this is just showing you one bottling order, but I appreciate that people will need to do this in bulk. So as soon as the posting has gone through, it's finished, it's deleted that particular bottling order. If I wanted to do this in bulk, I create new at the top. So here, effectively, I'm using an existing bottling order to create multiple bottling orders. So I have to select the location and the duty status that I want to pick my paid reserves from. So let's say blue and duty free. And then I do actions and get paid reserves. So this will now show me all the paid reserves in the blue location that are duty free. This you can filter, you can search. So you can also filter and search it by campaign. So if you've got a campaign against the products, you can then say, I want to attach all the products for a particular campaign and do the bottling in bulk. I can populate here. So if I edit this now, I can now say I want all of those 4, that 5. I only need to convert maybe half of those, all of those, all of those. So you select which ones. You can populate that quantity selected in bulk for all of them if you want to. Then say OK. It'll tell you that multiple bottling orders will be created. You say yes. Oh, and then quantity is not available. That's good. Let's try that again. Let's be a little bit less ambitious with the number of products. So, let's do 10 of those, 15 of those, and 2 of those. Let's try that again. Yes. So now if I go back to my list, you'll see it's created all these new bottling orders for me then to go in and tell the system how I want to convert the existing paid reserve into one of these new possible paid reserves by modifying the new quantity. I also said that you could do this in bulk from a managing point of view. So this is how you create the bottling orders that we want to convert. If I go to paid reserve worksheet, the advantage of creating those potential new items when I create the bottling order is that they automatically appear here on the worksheet, waiting for me just to go in and fill the quantities in. So this list here might obviously be for lots of campaigns, lots of items, lots of dates, so you can filter them down to create a subset maybe for a campaign or for a particular product that you want to bottle. And then you would go through and type in the new quantities and it'll work out the cost and the equivalent case given the cost on the original paid reserve that's in the system. So the details at the top here give you the existing paid reserve that relates to the one we're trying to change at the bottom. So if I click on here on bottling order 14, you'll see that bottling order 14 has changed to the top. If I click on 13, it'll become 13 at the top to try and just give you the information about where the stock is coming from. So this you can manage here. You can export it to Excel, and using Rapid Start, you could populate it back in bulk. So you can do all your calculations in Excel, import them back in, and then the system will check that all the calculations are correct, and you can post in bulk from here if you need to do that same posting I did before from the one bottling order. You can do it in bulk. So like I said, typically this is for the en primeur process, but in any situation, maybe the stock's arrived at the warehouse and the warehouse tell you that the units of measure are slightly different to what you expected, you could use this to convert it easily. Or if the customer had changed their mind and they want to convert it from one unit measure to another, you can use the bottling order for that as well. So hopefully, again, that's a useful bit for those that have lots of paid reserves and offer the kind of the en primeur process. So that was the overview of the three things I wanted to show you. So hopefully the Microsoft one is really good and they'll definitely be improving that. The paid reserves is kind of a first release that hopefully will be useful, but please give us feedback on things that we can improve. And then the bottling order is ready to go with that ability to change paid reserves. Do we have any questions?
No, no more questions at the moment. I just also wanted to remind people that we had the What's New in Business Central webinar last week. So there's a lot of focus in there around inventory and finance as well. So if you have time, that session will be available on demand, as will this one be, and links will be sent out in the newsletter and on LinkedIn, etc. So no more questions from us for now. Claudio, is that all from you?
That's what I wanted to show, yes.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. And as I said, everything will be available on demand. If you do have any further questions, get in touch and I'll be able to pass that information across to you, across to the Bevica team. Thanks for joining us today. Thank you, Claudio.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.